Thank you, Concordia. Taoiseach, over the past few months, the Minister for Transport is making one bizarre announcement after another. One, Irish people should grow salad on south-facing windowsills to ensure food supplies during COVID-19. Two, he said drivers slowing down on the motorway to save fuel. Three, one car in the village where the people from rural communities should cycle into in the morning and all would use the one car to go to work. Four, was stopping people from burning tough, and he won't arrest grannies if they do so. All these weird announcements are one way or another being supported by Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, making the country a laughingstock throughout the world. Another damaging announcement Minister Ryan has been making recently is the 20% cut in fares and the proposed 50% cut in fares for students and young people travelling on public transport. This, you will say, Taoiseach, should be welcome, but if it goes ahead, it will have a disastrous effect in rural communities, as no local commercial operator can avail of the 20% or 50% reductions. I raised this in the Dáil with the Minister as soon as he announced a 20% decrease in early April, but he still railroaded ahead, with it wiping out every private operator off this decrease, leaving many of their struggling businesses asking the question, can they survive? The local commercial operator or private operators, we all know, were still reeling from this shock when the Minister announced in the past 2 weeks he is railroading ahead with a 50% decrease of students and young people's travel. Again, something to be welcomed, but again he has nothing put in place for the private operator to pass this decrease to the students, mainly in rural Ireland, stating there is technical and funding issues preventing him. Taoiseach, this 50% decrease will benefit those who travel bus Éireann, the Lewis, the train, the Dart and Dublin bus, all Dublin City type transport, which I do not want to begrudge. But for a private operator like West Cork Connect, who carries 80% of the passengers in West Cork routes, has buses leaving Skibbereen and Bantry every hour, on the hour, every day, passing through Clonakilty, Bandon to Cork on one side, and from Dunmanway, Ballineen to Inishannon to Cork, and back on the other side. A service, I may add, which has opened up West Cork. This local commercial operator is employing huge staff in West Cork, but is not allowed to pass on the recent 20% or proposed 50% decrease to the West Cork students. It is not just putting his business in jeopardy, but also Wexford Bus, Cove Connect, Air Coach, Go Bus and CityLinks, all and many more facing the same whiteout. This is another gaffe by your Minister. But on top of this direct hit on the young people of rural communities who depend on private operators to connect their communities. Taoiseach, can you answer me why your government want to wipe out private operators unlike Bus Éireann, the Luce, Dart, Dublin Bus and the train? They have to pay their own staff, their own fuel, their own wear and tear to vehicles daily, and instead of encouraging them to do so, and your so-called Connecting Ireland dream out there, you are going to completely disconnect transport in rural Ireland. Why was what should have been such a positive announcement by this anti-rural government held off until everyone, rural and urban, could avail of this decrease? Taoiseach, this government's decision will see private bus companies being forced out of business by state-backed cuts and leave them now contemplating taking legal action. Not alone is this unfair, but is anti-competitive as well. Taoiseach, seeing as the Minister for Transport can't get this right, will you step in and treat everyone in rural Ireland as well as urban Ireland the same when it comes to this decrease in fares for our youth?
I want to thank the Deputy for raising the range of issues there. I didn't quite catch the first couple, but salads are good for you, by the way, you know, and I don't think it's weird to enjoy a salad. I don't think it's weird to cycle either, for that matter. But I think we need a sense of perspective and a bit of calm too. I think you've made the first point I would make. I think you have welcomed, the reduction in transport costs or fares that we've announced and brought in on respect to cost of living in terms of public transport and in terms of the young people. I think it's very important that we reduce public transport fees. Now, the Minister can do that readily within legal frameworks and so on. It's not as easy in terms of the private transport issue, and we will continue to look at that to see how we can be supportive. The government was very supportive of all of the transport network during COVID-19, for example. Perhaps you might like to acknowledge that too. Both private and public sector enterprises, both in transport and elsewhere. So the government doesn't have any anti-position in relation to private transport, as you suggested. I'd also say across a broad swathe of policies, the government is very pro-rural Ireland. The government has invested hugely in rural Ireland, across the board, and will continue to do so in a whole range of ways. And in fact, the Brexit Adjustment Reserve Fund, for example, has been worked on by the Minister for Agriculture and Fisheries with the Minister for Public Expenditure, with a view to making sure that significant funding goes to parts of rural Ireland that have been impacted by Brexit, for example, and the challenges with the fishing industry there. We've been very strong in relation to agriculture and rural development. Minister Heather Humphreys has been very strong in relation to community hubs right throughout rural Ireland, and quite substantial investments. Darragh O'Brien, in terms of the the various funding for towns across rural Ireland in the URDF, along in conjunction and complementing the work of Minister Heather Humphreys. If you go through any department, there's been very significant allocations made for rural Ireland, because what we want to do is rebalance the economic development in this country. We do believe there's an over-concentration. We have to rebalance that into the future. We want to develop strong regional cities like Cork, Limerick, Waterford, Galway, that will then strengthen the rural hinterlands of those particular cities. And public transport is all over West Cork as well. It doesn't have the same frequency, but public transport is in almost most towns in West Cork. It's complemented by private transport. School transport is predominantly a state-funded scheme, but predominantly used by private operators. You should know that. Yes, it is. That's just the way it's always worked in terms of CIE outsourcing.
Thank you, Taoiseach.
To private transport operators in the context of the school transport scheme. Now, in respect to the specific issue you've raised, yes, the Minister will continue to look to see what he can do to support private operators, but we shouldn't stop doing what is a good policy in reducing fares for young people in particular. I think that's a very good idea.
Thank you very much, Ken Colin, and thank you, Taoiseach, for your answer, but I don't think you quite grasp what the question was all about. You spent about 2 minutes talking about fishing and farming. Good God, come down to West Cork and talk to the fishermen and farmers. You won't be long there. You'll be run out of it quickly. But anyway, you have to come straight here with the public, Taoiseach. Outside of Dublin, the local commercial bus operators are the biggest operators in the country, carrying out 30 million passenger trips yearly in mainly rural Ireland. In a recent meeting with Minister Ryan, the Minister for Transport, the private operators asked a straight-up question: why were they not included in the 20% bus decrease for their youth on their buses? To be told by Minister Ryan that it was for financial reasons he could not go ahead with it. But to the whole country's astonishment, a few weeks later, he announces a 50% decrease, again exempting them, the young people of rural Ireland. Taoiseach, where did this minister find the money? That he did not have a few weeks earlier? Was it carbon tax money robbed from the hard-working people of rural Ireland? Or where the local commercial operators are convinced this minister wants to wipe them out of business, basically get rid of them? And one of these operators said to me, why don't he just come out and be honest about it and not drip-feed destroying our business day by day? Taoiseach, can you tell me today that this is not the fact? And if so, what is the exact date that the local commercial bus operators will be allowed to pass on the same decrease as all Dublin City travellers are allowed for students and in rural communities?
Taoiseach, please.
Well, again, nobody wants to wipe anybody out, Deputy, and Minister Eamon Ryan doesn't
For the post offices, by stilt.
Wipe anybody out, for that matter, any private transport operator, and they will not be wiped out either. And the fullness of time will show that. But in terms of the cost of living, which you were up in this House advocating for measures to reduce the cost of living, in the budget, I thought it was a very imaginary move and a good move to reduce transfers on public transport for young people to have them. To me, that's an excellent decision. And we should be doing more of that into the future, because that is the way to go. In terms of, it's not just, there's public transport all over the country.
You can't grasp it. We don't have public transport in most of the rural communities.
Sorry, you do have public transport.
Where do we have it? When do I have it? I can name out plenty of places in West Cork that doesn't have it. We have a private operators, and they're willing to do this.
You do.
And you're wiping them out.
And the private transport operator is very important.
You're sitting on your hands.
But you also have public transport. Don't pretend you don't. And it's not just Dublin either. And you know that too. And you have local link. You have a whole range of initiatives that the Minister has supported and the Minister has put funding in. But again, look, I think the... sorry?
Towns and villages, is it?
I can, yeah, because I went on public buses to West Cork.
Can you name out the towns and villages? Are you Cork? Have you forgotten Cork?
Bandon, you name it all the way down.
Yeah,
yes.
Same with the rest of the country. You forgot where you were the first day.
Deputy knows it well. Yeah.